Evan had driven into town early that cold evening, expecting nothing more than a quiet trip for flour, tools, and a new rope. The sky was turning orange as the sun dropped behind the hills, and the wind carried dust across the dirt road. He planned to go in, buy what he needed, load the wagon, and head back before dark. But life rarely followed simple plans, and that evening was no different. As he turned the corner near the old blacksmith shop, he noticed a wagon leaning awkwardly to one side. The left wheel had snapped under its own weight, and a few boards lay scattered across the ground. Standing beside the broken wagon was a woman. At first, he thought she was only tall, but when she straightened her back and stood fully, he realized she was much taller than anyone he had ever seen. She looked like she belonged to a different world, not because of anything strange or wrong, but because she carried a height and presence that no one around him carried. She was trying to lift part of the wagon to check the wheel, but even her strength wasn't enough to hold it steady. A few townspeople had stopped to stare. Some whispered, some laughed softly, others simply watched with wide eyes. Children peeked from behind their parents' coats, unsure whether they should be amazed or frightened. The woman kept her head down, as if she wanted to shrink into a smaller shape, even though she couldn't. Evan slowed his wagon and stepped down. He didn't stare at her like the others. He just saw someone in trouble. He walked closer, boots crunching on the gravel, and said in a gentle voice, "Ma'am, do you need help?" The woman looked up, surprised. Her eyes were soft, almost shy, and her voice was quiet for someone so tall. I don't want to bother anyone." "It's no bother at all," Evan replied. "Let me take a look at the wheel." Before she said anything else, he crouched and studied the broken wood. The wheel had split down the center. Even with strength, it couldn't be fixed without tools. He stood up again and wiped dust from his hands. "You're not going to get far with that wheel," he said calmly, "but I can help you get it fixed." The woman hesitated, shifting her weight nervously. Her height made her stand above him by almost 2 feet, but her expression was one of someone who felt small on the inside. "People don't usually help me," she said in a soft, unsure tone. "Well, I'm not people," Evan answered with a calm smile. "I'm just Evan." A few townsfolk snickered when they saw him talking to her, but he ignored them. To him, she wasn't a show. She was a traveler in need. "What's your name?" he asked kindly. "Mira," she whispered. "I'm looking for work. I thought maybe I could find something here, but I don't think this place is made for someone like me." Evan glanced at her again, not at her height but at her face, as if she had been traveling far. Dust clung to her boots and skirt, and her hands were rough from long journeys. But there was kindness in her eyes, and a sort of gentle sadness. "Everyone belongs somewhere," Evan said. "Maybe you just haven't found your place yet." She looked around at the people staring at her, and her voice dropped even lower. "I'm too big. Not made for this world. People don't want someone like me around. See, look, someone. I'm W Tech today. Whenever the stated everyone W Tech today." Evan felt something tighten in his chest. Not out of pity, but out of understanding. He knew what it felt like to be judged. He had grown up quiet, often ignored or underestimated because he wasn't loud or showy. He recognized that same, quiet, hurt in her. "Well," he said, "whether this town is made for you or not, I can at least help fix your wagon." Using a spare rope from his wagon, he managed to pull the broken wagon off the road to a safer spot. Mira tried to help, but every time she touched something, she stopped herself, afraid she might break more. The blacksmith was closed for the day, and it would take until morning to repair the wheel. Mira looked lost when she heard that. "Where will you stay tonight?" Evan asked. She lowered her head. I don't know. I've slept outside before. It's fine." "It isn't fine," Evan replied firmly. "It's cold tonight. You won't be safe out here." She tried to protest, but he lifted a hand gently to stop her. My ranch is only a few miles out. There's a spare room. It's simple, but it's warm. You can rest there tonight, and we'll fix the wagon in the morning. Mira looked stunned. No words came out for a moment. You trust me? She asked. Of course, he said. You look like someone who needs a rest, not someone looking for trouble. Her eyes softened. For the first time that day, she seemed relieved. She nodded slowly. If you're sure. Ain. Come on, he said. You can ride with me. Mira hesitated at the wagon. Most people barely fit in the seat next to him. For her, it was almost impossible. She tried to climb up carefully, making sure not to break anything. Evan steadied the wagon so it wouldn't tip. When she finally settled beside him, she took up more space than she wanted to, her shoulders hunched, her knees pressed together tightly. She apologized twice, but Evan simply said, Don't worry, you're fine. The horses started pulling the wagon, and the two of them rode out of town. The wind was cold, but the sky was beautiful, streaked with purple and gold. Mira watched silently, her large hands resting carefully on her lap. After a few minutes, Evan spoke. So, where were you headed? I was hoping for work, she answered softly. Maybe at a farm or ranch. But every place I passed, people laughed at me or got scared. I don't blame them. I know. I look strange. Evan shook his head. There's nothing strange about you. You're tall, sure, but that's just how you're made. She looked at him with a small hint of surprise, as if no one had ever said something so simple and honest to her. I don't want to be a burden, she said. You're not, Evan replied. Everyone needs help sometimes. They rode in silence again. But this time, it was a comfortable silence. Mira seemed to relax just a little. She took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs. When they reached the ranch, Evan helped her step down. She moved slowly, careful with every step, afraid she might damage the wooden porch. Evan opened the door and lit a lamp, casting a warm glow inside. This is it, he said. It's not fancy, but it's home. Mira looked around. The place was simple but warm, with wooden walls, a small fireplace, neatly arranged tools, and a clean table. It was the first welcoming place she had seen in a long time. I'll make some warm food, Evan said. You can wash up. She nodded and went to a small wash area. When she returned, she seemed a bit more at ease. The warm stew he had cooked filled the room with a pleasant smell. She sat carefully at the table, making sure not to lean too much or bump anything. For a few minutes, they ate quietly. Then Mira spoke. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. Evan looked up. Because you looked like someone who needed kindness, and because no one deserves to feel alone. Evan. Her eyes grew moist, but she blinked quickly and looked down at her bowl. She wasn't used to kindness. She wasn't used to someone seeing her beyond her height. When dinner was done, Evan showed her the spare room. The bed was small for her size, but she sat on the edge carefully, grateful for the warmth. If anything feels uncomfortable, let me know, Evan said. This is more than I expected, she whispered. Thank you. He nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll fix that wheel. Mira watched as he closed the door gently. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She lay down, curled slightly to fit the bed, and closed her eyes. She had traveled far, faced stairs and loneliness, and carried her height like a heavy weight. But tonight, in a quiet ranch far from any crowd, someone finally treated her like she mattered. And as the wind blew softly outside and the ranch settled into silence, Mira allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. The sun rose slowly the next morning, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. Evan had already been awake for an hour, feeding the horses and checking the fences. He moved carefully, trying not to make too much noise so Mira could rest. He knew she must have been exhausted after her long journey. When he walked back toward the house, he saw the bedroom door open slightly. Mira stepped out, her head lowered a little, as if she didn't want to disturb anything. "Good morning," Evan said kindly. Mira straightened up with surprise. She was still getting used to the idea of being in a safe place. Her long hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and she looked calmer than yesterday. "Good morning," she whispered. "I hope I didn't sleep too long." "Not at all," Evan answered. "You needed rest." He gestured to the table. "I made breakfast." She looked at the simple food, eggs, bread, and warm tea, as if it was something special. She approached the chair slowly, making sure not to break anything. She tried to sit very lightly, but the chair held her just fine. Evan could see she was still nervous, still scared of being too big for the things around her. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. Mira nodded. "Better than I have in many months," she admitted. "I forgot what it feels like to sleep somewhere warm." Evan smiled softly. "Well, I'm glad my old house could give you some comfort." They ate quietly. Sometimes Mira glanced at him, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. She wasn't used to talking freely. She wasn't used to someone listening without judgment. When they finished eating, Evan stood and said, "If you want, you can come outside with me. I'll show you around the ranch." Mira followed him to the yard. She kept her hands close to her sides, careful with every step. Evan noticed, but he didn't draw attention to it. He simply spoke, in a calm, natural tone. "This place isn't big," he said. "Just a few acres, some horses, a few cattle, and a small barn. It's a quiet life." Mira looked around. The open fields, the fresh air, the sound of birds, it all felt peaceful. It was very different from the towns where people stared at her. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "I like quiet places." Evan nodded. "Quiet can be good." As they walked toward the barn, Mira's foot brushed against a loose bucket. She froze instantly, worried she had knocked something over. But the bucket stayed in place. Evan simply lifted it and set it aside. "Don't worry," he said. "Things fall around here all the time." She let out a small breath. She wasn't used to being told not to worry. Most people scolded her for moving too much or being too close. Evan opened the barn door and showed her the horses. One of them, a friendly brown mare named Daisy, walked closer. Mira stepped back, unsure if the horse would be scared of her. But Daisy stretched her neck toward Mira as if she wanted to be petted. "She likes you," Evan said. Mira's face softened. She slowly reached out her hand and touched the horse's mane gently. Daisy nuzzled her arm. Mira smiled. An honest, warm smile that came naturally. "She's sweet," Mira said. "Animals never stare at me the way people do." "Animals only see kindness," Evan replied. "And you have plenty of that." Mira looked down, not knowing how to respond. Compliments were rare in her life. Evan gave her a few small tasks, feeding the horses, holding a saddle, sweeping part of the barn floor. She tried to do everything carefully, worried she might break tools or damage something. A few times her large hands fumbled with small handles or thin ropes. Each time she apologized softly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm not good with small things." "It's okay," Evan said gently. "Not everything is built for the same size. You just need to find the work that suits you." After a little while, he took her to the cattle area. A young calf had gotten stuck between two wooden rails. The calf cried softly, unable to free itself. Evan tried to pull the rails apart, but the wood didn't budge. "I might need to cut this," he said. "It'll take a bit of time." Mira stepped forward. "Can I try?" Evan nodded, stepping aside. Mira gently placed her strong hands on the rails and pulled them apart with steady force. The wood creaked, but did not break. She moved slowly, carefully, with full control. The opening widened, and the calf slipped out safely. Evan stared in amazement. "That was incredible," he said. "You saved her. All round. We sons saw 'em. We saw 'em. Every third." Mira looked at the calf, rubbing its head with a proud but shy expression. "I'm glad I could help." "See?" Evan said, smiling. "There are things here that you're perfect for. You're not too big. You're just strong in ways most people aren't." Her eyes softened. She wasn't used to someone seeing her height as something good. As the morning continued, Mira helped him lift heavy items, hay bales, wooden crates, tools that he usually struggled with alone. She wasn't loud or forceful. She moved with surprising gentleness, always paying attention to where she stepped. Evan noticed how careful she was with everything. Her size didn't make her clumsy. It made her powerful and cautious at the same time. Around midday, they sat outside, sharing water and taking a little break. Mira gazed at the fields, letting the sunlight warm her face. "This place feels different," she said quietly. "Nobody here is laughing at me. Nobody is afraid." "That's because you're not someone to fear," Evan replied. "You're just someone who hasn't been treated right." She turned to him, studying his gentle expression. "Why are you so kind to me?" "Because kindness is easy," he said softly. "And because you deserve it as much as anyone else." Mira held those words inside, letting them settle like seeds in her heart. Later in the afternoon, the sky started to darken a bit, and light clouds formed above the hills. Evan walked with her toward the tool shed, explaining how the ranch worked. Mira listened carefully to every word, wanting to learn, wanting to be useful. At one point, she tried to lift a small toolbox, but the handle snapped. She froze, eyes wide with panic. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I ruined it." Evan walked over calmly. "It was old. It would have broken soon anyway." "But she tried to say. "Mira," he interrupted gently. "A broken toolbox is nothing. It's not something to be scared of." She looked down at her large hands. "I always break things. Doors, chairs, tools. I try to be gentle, but people still say I'm too big, too much." Evan shook his head. "People say foolish things all the time. But you're careful. I've met plenty of people who break things not because they're big, but because they don't pay attention. You do." Mira breathed out slowly. She appreciated his words more than she could express. When they walked back to the house for lunch, she hesitated before entering. "I don't want to be a burden," she said softly. "You're helping more than you know," Evan said. "The ranch hasn't run this smoothly in a long time." She stepped inside. While he cooked, she stood nearby, watching, offering to help but stepping back when he said it was fine. She seemed curious about everything, how he chopped vegetables, how he lit the stove, how he moved so easily around the small kitchen. "You do things so easily," she said. "I feel like I don't fit in places like this." "You don't have to fit into the place," Evan answered. "The place should fit around you." She blinked, surprised again by his simple but thoughtful words. They spent the rest of the day working together, fixing fences, carrying feed, checking the barn roof. Mira learned quickly. She listened carefully and followed instructions with quiet determination. Evan noticed something important. She wanted to belong somewhere. She wanted to be useful. She wanted a home that didn't make her feel wrong. As the sun began to set, turning the sky into gold and red, Mira stood with Evan near the fence. She rested her hands on the top rail, watching deer move in the distance. "Evan," she whispered. "Thank you for treating me like a normal person." He looked at her with calm eyes. "You are a normal person. A normal person who's 7'3", she said with a small, shy smile. Evan chuckled softly. She turned her face away, trying to hide the emotion in her eyes. The evening wind carried a cool breath through the fields. Mira stood beside him in peaceful silence. For the first time in many years, she didn't feel out of place. She didn't feel like a giant surrounded by small things. She felt accepted. She felt like she belonged. For the next few days, Mira settled into the rhythm of the ranch. She woke early, helped with chores, and moved through the fields with a quiet confidence that Evan had never seen in her before. Each morning, she seemed a little more at ease, a little less tense. The ranch, which had once felt too big for Evan to manage alone, suddenly felt alive again. Even the horses seemed calmer when she walked by, as if they sensed her gentle nature. But peace in life rarely lasted long, and the small town nearby had a way of stirring trouble where none was needed. It began when a few ranch hands from town heard rumors that a giant woman was living at Evan's place. They didn't bother to learn her name, her story, or her kindness. They simply treated her height as something strange to laugh at. One afternoon, Mira was carrying a wooden beam to the barn while Evan checked the fence line. The sky was bright, and the air felt calm. She hummed softly to herself, a small habit she picked up ever since she started feeling safe. She didn't know that 3 men from town were approaching the ranch gate. Evan saw them first. He recognized them: Tom, Walker, and Dean. They were known to drink too much and talk too loud. None of them had good intentions when they traveled together. Evan walked toward them, wiping his hands on his pants. "Afternoon," he said cautiously. Tom grinned in a way that made Evan uneasy. "We heard you've got yourself some new worker," he said. "Someone real, unusual." Walker elbowed Dean, and both snickered like children. Evan's face tightened slightly. He didn't like where this was going. "She's just someone passing through," Evan said calmly. "And she's helping out while her wagon is fixed. She's our—" "Oh, helping?" Walker laughed. "Is that what you call it? We heard she's big enough to lift a cow." Dean added, "Must be nice to have someone like that around. Bet she can toss you across the yard." Their laughter echoed in the open space. Mira heard it from the barn. The wooden beam in her hands suddenly felt heavier. She held it tighter, afraid to step outside. All the memories of townspeople staring, whispering, and mocking came flooding back. She tried to breathe slowly, but her chest tightened. Evan didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He stood tall and firm. "She's not someone for you to joke about," he said in a controlled voice. "She hasn't bothered you. Leave her alone." Tom raised an eyebrow. "We just want to take a look. That's all. Heard she's something worth seeing." Evan's jaw tightened. "She's a person, not a sight for you to gawk at. Go back to town." Walker stepped forward slightly. "Come on, Evan. Don't be so serious. We're just having a little fun." Mira heard footsteps approaching. She slowly placed the beam down and peeked out of the barn. When she saw the 3 men staring toward her direction, her heart pounded. She tried to stay hidden, but her height made it difficult. Even half hidden, she was impossible to miss. Dean pointed. "There she is." Mira flinched visibly. The men burst into laughter. "What did you bring home, Evan?" Tom called out loudly. "A giant? A walking tree?" Mira stepped back deeper into the barn, her hands shaking. She knew they weren't here for kindness. She had heard these words before in other towns. She knew the look in their eyes. Fearful. Mocking. Mean. Evan stepped between the barn and the men, blocking their view. His voice was steady but carried a strength that made even the loud men pause. "You 3 need to leave," he said. "Right now." Tom scoffed. "Or what? You going to make us?" "Yes," Evan said firmly. "If I have to." The men exchanged surprised looks. Evan was known to be quiet, calm, and gentle. No one expected him to stand so boldly. Walker sneered. "She must mean something to you." Evan didn't look away. "She means respect." and you're not giving it. For a moment, the air felt heavy. Mira watched from inside the barn, her breath trembling. No one had ever stood up for her like that. No one had ever pushed back against people who mocked her. She felt an ache in her chest, a mixture of fear and gratitude. Dean muttered something under his breath, and Tom kicked the dirt with a scowl. Fine. We're leaving. But everyone in town already knows about her. You won't be able to hide her forever. Evan didn't move until they turned and walked away from the ranch. Only when they were out of sight did he release a slow breath. The tension left his shoulders gradually. He walked to the barn and gently pushed the door open. Mira was standing in the shadows, her hands clasped tightly together. She looked like she wanted to disappear. I'm sorry, she whispered, before he could speak. They came because of me. I bring trouble everywhere I go. Evan stepped closer and shook his head. This isn't your fault. They came because they don't know how to behave. That's not on you. Ah. But if I wasn't here, she began. If you weren't here, Evan interrupted softly, the ranch wouldn't be running this well. The fences wouldn't be fixed. The animals wouldn't be this calm. And I wouldn't have someone kind to work beside each day. Her eyes welled with emotion. She had been told her whole life that she was a problem. Hearing the opposite felt almost unreal. But people will keep coming, she said. They'll stare. They'll talk. I don't want to bring more trouble to your life. Evan stepped a little closer. Trouble isn't your size, Mira. Trouble is people who can't see past it. She tried to wipe her eyes quickly before tears could fall. She didn't want to look weak or emotional. Maybe I should leave, she whispered. Maybe it's safer for you if I go. Evan felt something sharp twist inside him at the thought of her leaving. The ranch had felt warmer since she arrived. He didn't want to lose that. You're not leaving because some loud men don't know respect, he said gently. You deserve a place where you can be safe. Let this be that place. Mira looked away, struggling with her own doubts. She had never stayed anywhere long. She had learned to run before trouble grew too big. But Evan's voice was steady, warm, and sincere. And she trusted it. Before she could answer, dark clouds began rolling over the sky. The wind picked up, whipping dust across the fields. Evan stepped outside and looked up. A storm's coming, he said. Within minutes, the sky darkened. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Evan began securing everything, closing windows, tying ropes, checking the barn doors. Mira rushed to help, moving faster than he had ever seen her move. Her height, which once made her feel awkward, now gave her speed and strength. A loud crack echoed from the west side of the field. One of the fence posts had snapped under the pressure of the wind. Cattle began to panic, running toward the broken section. Evan shouted, "We have to stop them before they scatter." Without hesitation, Mira sprinted across the field. Her long strides carried her faster than Evan could run. She reached the broken fence just as a few cattle tried to push through. She stood in front of them, arms out, her presence enough to calm the frightened animals. The wind howled, blowing dust into her face, but she held her ground. She grabbed a fallen beam and pressed it against the fence opening, using her strength to hold it steady. Evan reached her, breathless. "You're amazing," he said, helping her secure temporary support until the storm passed. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked, and rain began pouring heavily. Together, they worked to guide the cattle back toward safety. Mira lifted heavy beams, held trembling animals, and stood against the wild wind like a guardian. By the time the storm finally eased, they were both soaked and exhausted. But the ranch was safe. The animals were safe. Evan looked at her with deep respect. "You saved this place." Mira looked down at her muddy hands. "I just did what I could." "What you did," Evan corrected. She felt warmth spread through her chest, not from the air, but from his words. For so long she had been told she was too big, Too strange. Too different. But here, on this ranch, she was necessary, strong, valued. And for the first time since her childhood, she felt proud of herself. She breathed softly, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Evan, for seeing me." Evan met her eyes with quiet certainty. "I don't see your height first. I see your heart." She looked away quickly, overwhelmed, but her lips curved into a small, honest smile. In that quiet moment, with rain dripping from the barn roof and the world settling after a storm, Mira began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't meant to run forever. Maybe she had finally found a place where she belonged. The morning after the storm, the ranch was covered in a soft layer of dew. Broken branches lay scattered in the fields, and the fences needed repair. But the quiet air brought a sense of peace. The sky was bright again, washed clean by the heavy rain. Evan stepped out of the house with a warm cup of tea and stretched his back, still sore from the long night. He glanced toward the barn and saw Mira standing near the entrance, watching the sunrise. Her tall frame looked steady and calm against the golden light. She held her hands folded together, as if she was deep in thought. Evan walked toward her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You're up early," he said gently. Mira turned and smiled a little. "I couldn't sleep much. The storm was so strong. I kept thinking about all the times I had to face storms alone. Last night was different." Evan nodded. "Because you weren't alone this time." She looked down, her voice soft. "Yes. And it felt good. To help. To be useful." "You were more than useful," Evan said. "You held half the ranch together. I couldn't have done it without you." A blush touched her cheeks. Something rare for her. She wasn't used to being praised so openly. "I just did what I could." Evan shook his head. "No, Mira. You did more than that. You stood your ground when things got scary. You didn't run. You didn't hide." Mira took a long breath. For a moment, I felt strong. Not strange. Not embarrassing. Just strong. "You are strong," Evan replied kindly. "Inside and out." She held his gaze for a moment. Her eyes were warm and thoughtful. Then, she looked away, almost shy again. "Evan, I want to thank you. Not just for last night, but for everything. You gave me a place to rest, a chance to work, and you treated me like a real person. I don't get that often." "You deserve it," he said simply. She hesitated before speaking again. "I've been thinking about leaving. Once my wagon is fixed." The words hit Evan like a cold wind. He tried not to show it, but it tightened his chest. "Leaving?" he asked quietly. "Why?" Mira's expression turned troubled. "I don't want trouble to follow me here. Those men, they won't stop talking. The town will know about me. People will come. They'll stare. They'll laugh. I don't want them to cause problems for you." Evan stepped closer. "Mira, this ranch hasn't felt like a home in years. Not truly. It was just land and chores and long days. But since you came, everything feels different. Better. You brought life back to this place." Mira swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. Evan continued, his voice steady. "You think you're bringing trouble. You're not. You're bringing strength and kindness. You're bringing peace. And you're helping me. More than you know." Mira looked at the ground, her tall shadow stretching long behind her. "I'm afraid of staying too long," she whispered. "Afraid I'll make things harder for you." "You're making them easier," he said. Before she could answer, Daisy, the friendly brown horse, walked toward them with soft steps. Mira reached out and petted her, and the horse nuzzled her shoulder. Mira smiled gently. Evan watched the scene, and his heart felt full. "Even the animals trust you," he said softly. "That's because animals are simple," Mira answered. "They understand feelings better than people do." "And what do they feel from you?" Evan asked. That I wouldn't hurt them, she said. That I'm gentle even if I'm strong. That's exactly how I see you, Evan said, surprising her with his honesty. Mira took in a trembling breath. She wasn't used to such words. They felt warm, almost frightening in their kindness. They spent the morning repairing the fences. Mira lifted heavy posts with ease, while Evan hammered them in place. They worked side by side, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent, both comfortable in each other's presence. Whenever Mira struggled with a tool too small for her hands, Evan gently adjusted it without making her feel awkward. Whenever Evan tired from carrying something, Mira stepped in quietly and helped. As the hours passed, the ranch looked whole again, stronger than before. By afternoon, they rested under a tall tree near the field. Evan handed Mira a cup of cool water. She drank slowly, enjoying the small break. Evan, she said after a moment, do you really think I belong here? Yes, he answered without hesitation. But why? She asked. I look different from everyone. I can't fit into most places. Chairs, beds, tools, they're all too small. People stare wherever I go. You belong here because this place doesn't need you to be small, Evan said softly. It just needs you to be you. Mira looked out at the open fields, thinking about those words. I've always wanted a place where I didn't feel like I was taking up too much space, she whispered. You're not taking too much space, Evan said gently. You're filling empty space that's been lonely for too long. She felt her chest tighten with emotion. Evan, do you really mean that? I do. A soft breeze moved through the grass. Birds flew overhead. Mira closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peacefulness of the ranch settle deep inside her. Later that day, Evan brought out Mira's damaged wagon wheel. Let's finish fixing this, he said. Though secretly, he didn't want to finish it at all. Fixing it meant she might leave. Mira helped him lift the wagon, and together, they replaced the broken wheel. When the job was done, Mira stared at the wagon quietly. This wagon has been my home for months, she said, but it never truly felt like one. Home isn't wheels and wood, Evan replied. It's where you feel safe. She looked at him, unsure but hopeful. I feel safe here, she admitted softly. Evan nodded. Then stay. She took a step closer, nervously twisting her hands together. Are you sure you want someone like me here? Someone who doesn't fit the way others do? Who decides what fits? Evan asked gently. This ranch is wide, open, calm. It accepts anyone who works hard and lives kindly. You do both. Mira blinked back a warm tear. I never thought someone would say those words to me. You deserve to hear them, he said. As evening approached, the two of them walked around the ranch one last time for the day. The sky turned gold again, the same warm color it had been the day they met. Mira paused near the fence, touching the top rail gently. Evan, she said quietly. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for seeing more than my height. Evan stepped beside her. Thank you for bringing your strength here. For your kindness. For being brave. And for trusting me. Mira's voice trembled slightly. I want to stay, if you truly want me to. Evan smiled softly. I do. She let out a slow breath, a breath she'd been holding for years, without even realizing it. A breath of relief, belonging, and quiet happiness. The ranch felt warm. The fields felt welcoming. And Mira felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like she had a place in this world. That night, Mira walked into her small room and sat on the edge of the bed. It was still small for her, still tight around the edges. But for the first time, she didn't feel out of place. She didn't feel like a burden. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She lay down, closing her eyes with a gentle smile. Outside, Evan checked the barn one last time. making sure everything was secure. As he walked back to the house, he looked at the warm light glowing from Mira's window. Something inside him felt settled, whole. He knew life would not be simple. People from town might talk, strangers might stare, but none of that mattered. Mira wasn't alone anymore, and neither was he. The ranch, once silent and empty, was now filled with purpose. Two people, different in size and shape, had found comfort in each other's presence, and in that connection, they found the beginning of something new. As the moon rose over the quiet fields, Mira whispered softly into the darkness, "Maybe I wasn't too big after all. Maybe I just needed the right place." And the ranch, calm and gentle in the night, answered her with silence, an accepting silence that promised she finally belonged.